Yes. So, as a student, my savings fund or ideology was after graduation, if I do not manage to get a job, then we have like a short term pass which we can kind of get in Singapore. So, which is for 3 months. Then, can I survive by myself in Singapore for 3 months? And that is how I was saving. And once that was done, during my initial days of working, I think the savings was, if I lose my job, can I survive for 6 months?
Okay, welcome to a new episode of Chai Pe Kharcha. This week we have a very special guest. We have Raka Banerjee, who's joining us this week. She's been in Singapore for the last 7 years. Let me ask Raka to introduce herself, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Sid, and everyone. Thank you for having me over. I'm Raka. I'm working in tech, like Sid said, and I've been in Singapore for over past 7 years now. Came here to do my master's in applied economics from NTU, Nanyang Technological University. Prior to that, I have done my bachelor's from Delhi University in India. Grown up in India, mostly in Delhi and Kolkata. And yeah, post my masters, I started my professional career in Singapore. Started my stint at consulting at a small management consulting firm in Singapore for about 3 years. Post that, I came to trust and safety with Meta and currently working in the strategy and risk operation side of things. Outside of work, I think I also enjoy arts, dance, and culture. I'm a trained classical dancer, and now and then I try to perform and stay grounded to my roots as well. And yes, I also try to be involved within the community and partake in some of the cultural celebrations and events that happen in and around Singapore. I'm a part of the Singapore chapter for Project Management Institute. So I host and take part in some of the Singapore chapter events for that. And yes, I think that's pretty much about me.
That's awesome. You did your master's in applied economics, right? Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Which is very interesting, and we'll delve into that on how that might have affected your financial perspective. When you came here from India, what was the primary motivation? As in, was it just the university? You were thinking about occupation after studying here, and was money a factor in that?
I think the primary factor would be during my high school and graduating from 12th standard. So, India has a very cutthroat competition post 12th. Either we go into IIT JEE or like for me, I had taken physics, chemistry, maths with economics. So, either I had to take the engineering route or economics route. And for economics, I wanted a particular college in Delhi University for a particular campus. But as there are so many reservations, despite having a very high percentage for my top four, I was quite disheartened with my college, although it was not a bad one. So that kind of made me think of my further professional journey within India. And this might be a little bit funny, but when I used to come back from college, there was like a metro which used to come back from Gurgaon, wherein all the MNC and IT hub was situated and still is. So looking at that metro, like it made me question whether now I want to take this 6 p.m. metro ride every day post college and post graduation, or do I want to sit for government exams wherein I have to go through the same kind of issue as I faced during my college days being a general candidate. So that kind of made me think about like future prospects and where do I end up seeing myself. And along with that, I think I also wanted a little bit of, freedom and experience to live life on my own terms and see if I can manage it at all, even during my college. So these two were the main factors to, I try out for GRE, and my main focus was going to the US. But it just so happened that I also had my graduate examinations, as well as there was an entrance examination for masters in economics. And my parents were not too confident that I would make it through any of the masters college, like being a very conservative Indian parents, and they were not too keen on also letting their only child fly out. So I had to prioritize those, and as a result, I missed out a lot of deadlines. And I just happened to apply to Singapore just to try out. I was in with the mindset that nothing is going to work out this year. Perhaps I have to take a drop here and figure it out. But luckily, it worked out. Then we did like the financials of studying in Singapore versus US. And I think for US, you anyway have to go for a 2 year degree. And here I had the option to go for a 1 year degree. There was also a scholarship that they were providing. Along with that, you can have a bond which would allow you to work here for 3 years post your graduation. And that kind of gives you an advantage to get into the job market as opposed to just graduating with a normal degree. So having all these factors and variables, and we put it together, and we thought that let's try out Singapore. And luckily, my parents were supportive, so I did not have to take a student loan. Although, like, I took a loan from my dad, but so that's how we did the entire calculation and took the decision.
This is very interesting. This is interesting because we've had so many guests, but no one has, and I'm sure a lot of people would have this as a factor, but no one has explicitly talked about the bureaucratic issues that one faces in India, which led them to become NRI. So yeah, quite interesting. Okay,
Also,
so
it's interesting because my father is in the civil services, so he
oh
has
wow,
lived through the system, and he was also instrumental in saying that, you know what, just go out. If to I did not have the financial means, but we have. So if that is something you want to pursue, then please go ahead. So yeah, I think that also really matters, having that support and backing.
yeah, yeah. Again, very interesting. Okay, so you came here, studied in NTU, started working a consulting firm, and when did you tell us about when did you think about personal finance? Because that in Singapore was the first time you lived by yourself. So right from the day-to-day expense piece to thinking long term in terms of investments in various products. When that starts striking you कि अच्छा अब तो करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि अब अकेले हैं, and how did you plan the flow?
Yeah, I think I would first start about like thinking about savings as a student, and then like how I even started investing. So as a student, I think I was on a very tight budget, and I had the consciousness to feel guilty to spend my parents' money to go out and party. So that was the point when I started picking up these part-time jobs. So I worked at a bubble tea store during my masters as a part-time to cover for my miscellaneous expenditures. And from there, I was very disciplined in terms of saving. So when I used to get the money in cash, that kind of made me see how much am I really giving out and keeping. So hence I made this discipline that I would keep a particular amount of cash just to spend. Rest I would just like put it back in the bank account so that I don't touch it. And during that time, I think I saved enough to cover for 2-3 months of rent post my masters. Speaking to a lot of people, and decided to invest that amount in crypto. And later I sold that in 2019 when the tax rules were not clearly defined and I was not too sure. But yeah, that is how it kind of started. And later when I started working, I'll just make journey of my living situation. So In during my masters, I had a single bedroom in the hostel, and then when I started working, I was sharing a flat and I was also sharing a bedroom, and the rent that I was spending that time as a percentage of my income was like just 10% of my income. So I really had a lot to save, and that kind of motivated me to continue in that situation for around 1 or 2 more years. Then I moved to share a flat but had my own room, and now I have my own studio. I just recently got married, so I'm also planning to move with my husband, who is now relocated somewhere else. But yeah, this was the trajectory of sharing a bedroom to having your own studio, because your lifestyle changes, your income changes, and how you view life also kind of changes. And right now, I spend around 30% of my income on rental expenses, which is significantly higher than what I used to spend initially. But at that time, I did not have any discipline of investing, neither did I have knowledge. The only exposure I had was from my parents, who have traditionally invested in provident funds and were government employees. So that is their exposure. So it also took me time to understand that there's a whole world of investing in stocks, funds, real estate, crypto, and whatnot. So this is how it has been for me.
Ishan, you had a question.
No, I actually had a point to make, something very interesting that Raka said. So it's kind of about the relationship with money that has evolved over time. My dad still prefers using cash to cards, primarily for what, when you're actually spending cash, you take it out of your wallet and you're counting and you give money, versus when you just tap something and move on. The mind works very differently. The cash spending is, it feels like you're giving part of you. The tap and move on, or the swipe, it doesn't have the same impact, which is, I'm sure there is a psychology to it, which is what banks use, which is why cashless is a movement that banks are really trying to do. But it is very interesting how these things work, and it is very different how I used to spend again when I was a student, and or when I initially had all my pocket money in cash, versus how I spend now. The feeling of spending is very, very different. Back then, there used to be a certain amount of guilt when you were spending, saying, should I really be spending this money? Now it is just like, it's fine, whatever it is. There are automated spends that are happening. You click a button and it charges your card. So it's just a big change from a spend perspective, how things have evolved. But another very interesting thing, Raka, that you mentioned was how you've moved from, sharing a room to sharing a flat to now having your own studio. Did you actually think about how your expenses were changing? Was that a conscious decision, saying I am now okay to change how much money I'm spending on this? Was it based on income levels changing, or was it just like, I am done with this life, I need to move on to the next stage?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for each stage it was like a combination of both the factors. So when I moved from the room to like having my own room, I think it was mostly driven by income, but also I understood that at the current income also I could afford that. It's just I was preferring to save more, but it was coming at an expense of really managing schedules with another person who is living a different lifestyle. They were student versus you're a working professional. So made came with that consciousness. But later when I came for the studio, of course, I mean, the salaries don't increase as much as the rental expenses were increasing in Singapore. Right now it's still better, but it was really bad. And yeah, again, there were a lot of adjustments that also need to come with also sharing a flat and having to adjust your schedules and preferences around people. So it just made sense with the rhythm of life that also took a precedence. And financially it was not too bad at that point of time. Only later with my wedding expenditures etc., things got very tight. But yeah, overall I think I do not have any regrets.
Okay, let's move forward in that journey now. You passed out from NTU, you started working, you've moved to a studio apartment, and you're looking at savings, you're looking at uh, various products. When did is this the time when you started devoting a part of your income into? So did you do a SIP sort of a thing, or did you think about lump sum? Did you think about real estate versus equity versus any other thing? You mentioned you had tried crypto initially, but then sold it off. So how was that, please?
Yeah.
So to add to that, I know you are coming from an economics background, right? Like, did you think about investing only in India or outside of India, like looking at the macroeconomic situation and stuff? I think that would be good to learn from you.
Yes, in terms of like investing in India, I think for a long time I held back because I did not have. So a lot of my friends and colleagues who were from India, they had the obligation to send back their parents the money to support them. But like fortunately, I did not have that obligation, and that did not make me open any account in India for the longest of time, because my parents were very wary of the Indian taxes and like, stay off of it for as long as you can. Let's not get into that. But a very big like discovery so as to say is the NRI account, which would help you to send funds there. When you're there, just spend it through your NRI accounts. If your parents, if there arises any emergency, they can take it out through NRI account. And you can also trade, invest using that account. And only very recently, like, I started using Zerodha for India, and doing a little bit of trading in the basic sectors: steel, oil, tech, and so on. So for India and Indian markets, I kept like thinking and rethinking that it's emerging, it's developing, it's growing. But I kept like, I was too concerned about the tax obligations. Filing ITR is a very tiring and cumbersome process. But I think, yeah, with the NRI perspective, it gave me more confidence, and now I'm more comfortable. In terms of investing in Singapore, I think it's a great place to do all your investment strategies, etc. And initial days, again, like, it was very simple in terms of provident funds or like long term investments in DBS, etc. But 2 3 years ago, I think I started investing in index funds, S&P 500, and so on. I also had investments in terms of the DBS inbuilt trading system. It gives a good medium to long term returns. You will see returns in 2 to 3 years, which worked out for me. For a while, I had Tiger Brokers, which is essentially, if you want to diversify your investment in the Asian markets, Hong Kong, etc., they would kind of trade for you. Again, a medium long term instrument. You will have goodish returns in 2 to 3 years. And I used Binance for my crypto trading, etc. For India, I think, like I said, the known and emerging companies, like known is steel, we have Tata. Oil, we have Adani. Semiconductor is something that is growing. Micron is heavily investing in India. And now we have the Make in India campaign going really strong. So we should have more interest out there. And yeah, gold bonds are something that I have also sworn by. This is where I am right now. Real estate is something that I'm not yet touched, but we do hope to move to Europe. That is where my husband is, and have a property there super soon. I might have more insights in a later podcast.
So that one question I had, Raka, was, since you touched on it before your first investment into crypto, you mentioned that you were very diligent in terms of saving. So was there something that you were building up to, saying this is what will be my savings target, or an emergency fund, or a bigger amount, or a different, number of months of saving that you target now?
Yes. So as a student, my savings fund or ideology was, after graduation, if I do not manage to get a job, then we have like a short term pass which we can kind of get in Singapore. So, which is for 3 months. Then, can I survive by myself in Singapore for 3 months? And that is how I was saving. And once that was done, during my initial days of working, I think the savings was, if I lose my job, can I survive for 6 months? And now I think as my parents are growing older, I am married, there are multiple savings and investment bonds. One is like for our parents' health and emergencies, and a stream of savings for that. Then for the property that we want to buy, that. And also, like, once you are married, I feel like there has to be a shift in your mindset from investing and saving as an individual to pooling together and having a pooled income. Because if you save together, invest together, and only then you would grow together as a family. So I feel like that is something that we are also working on right now. It's a bit challenging because we are located out of two different countries, but the ideology is that one for our parents' medical emergencies, one for the house, then later childcare, etc., and retirement and our future. So right now, I think it's more nuanced and uh, more longer term than as a student just surviving for 3 months followed by 6 months. So that has been the shift in mindset, I would say.
That's interesting. So I want to really ask the question. So what prompted you to go into crypto? And the reason I'm asking that is you sold off in 2019. So you went in way before the whole world suddenly started going into crypto during the lockdown time when Bitcoin suddenly surged. So what prompted you to go in? What did you buy, if you can share that? And then you already said why you sold, but like, was it profitable? How did it work?
Yeah, I think like we were just a group of friends, and during our uni, we were just having some finance lessons, etc. And there were other people who had done CFA at that point of time, and they were very certain of to going up and it being the thing of the time. So I also learned from their research, and I was like, okay, this is the time. And I had very less idea about the tax laws and all the regulations that were about to come with crypto. And in 2019, I think it was just 1 year after me working, my industry was such that I had to assist clients and companies with company setup. And a lot of them wanted to set up crypto businesses, which was where I came to know that these were not properly regulated and myth or a boom which can just go away anytime. And that is when I kind of panicked and exited. I think I did make some profit, but with the amount of risk that was coming with it, I chose to stay away from it. And I think I exited too soon as well.
I could see Sid getting very proud when a bunch of economists and CFAs were saying crypto is going to go up.
Annie, so do you regret leaving too early, seeing the Bitcoin price right now? Massively regret it.
Yeah, I mean, there are two emotions. Like, the Bengali in me is at peace, but of course, like looking at people who went in it later and, bragging the profits that they've made, it does pinch.
I was joking. Yeah, I think we've had a crypto episode, and you should, if you have not seen it, do check it out. But yeah, we have very polarized opinions on crypto uh, among the four of us.
Okay.
Okay. So I have one question which I thought while you were speaking about the previous response, I thought was very interesting. You mentioned that you will definitely buy a house in Europe.
Mhm.
Around this certainty, you, or at least I sensed a certainty कि ये तो करना ही है. ऐसे घर खरीदने is a must. Where is that coming from? Is that purely emotional? Is there a financial perspective to it? And buying a home in Europe, as in outside of India.
I think all great questions. So, why in Europe and outside India? I think within India, my parents already have like properties, and my husband's parents also have, and he also has. Right now, for the next like 20 years or so, like all going well, we do not wish to relocate back to India unless, like, there are any emergencies, God forbid. And in terms of Singapore versus Europe, so in Singapore, like, it has been challenging to find a permanent residence, or and citizenship is a very far dream. However, like in Europe, I think it's fairly simpler and easier to get. With 2 years and having certain qualifications in place, you can get the PR, and 5 years within, there are greater chances to secure a citizenship, which is where the factor of social security comes in. So, as a married family, I think we would want to be socially secure. And like, if one of us loses the job, at least we shouldn't be asked to, immediately evacuate the country within a month. Which is where Singapore kind of puts you. And Europe has very labor friendly laws and very stable in terms of that. So that is where the inclination to kind of live there long term comes from. And with him being located there, it makes more sense. And why having a house? I think firstly the emotional part, of course, to have a family, grow somewhere. And secondly, I think I do realize the amount of rent both of us are spending separately. And if we calculate it over a period of 10 years, it does make sense to have them channeled into EMIs, which would be, I think, lesser than what we are. But that also comes with other calculations. The value of resale of the property, would that make sense in that particular area? The wealth tax we have to pay, etc. But I think we've done a rough calculation, and with that, I think buying a place of our own does make sense. And I think for me, having like goals and a little bit of vision helps me in achieving that. So that's where I come from, that hey, we have to do this next.
This is the end of part 1 of the episode. We will continue next week with part 2. Thank you for listening in and stay tuned.